All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello all. It is Monday, and a grim Monday indeed, given the developments in the Middle East. We have devoted a lot of the show today to discussions around what's happening in Israel with Hamas, with Hezbollah now. Hezbollah involved, Hezbollah, as you probably are aware, they come out of Lebanon. These are both terrorist groups, brutal terrorist groups. And the brutality and the terror associated with opening fire wantonly on festival goers, it's indefensible. And we will talk about, this whole notion of provocation. But I'm sorry, if you're defending this kind of wanton, grotesque violence, in my judgment, you're on thin ice. That said, we'll talk about the history of the region, the history of these groups, what's happening now, hostages taken, among them Americans, and what will happen in threats to kill the hostages as retaliation for Israeli airstrikes. That's the latest from Hamas. A lot to do today, but it's not all grim. It's not all grim. No. It's not all grim. We've had some really cool shout-outs from people wishing us a happy anniversary. It's our 1-year anniversary this week, and we're really excited about that. So I promise you some lighter moments in the show. The Niners had a big night last night. We'll talk about that a bit with the commissioner. Albert is here today. Commish,
Albert, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. And Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
Fresh off the Nikki Maduro show. I watched a bunch of it today.
Yeah.
And I want to get right into what's. Let me just quickly run down what's happening today, and then I want to get right to John Rothmann. As I mentioned, John will join us in a moment. Then Richard Greene, the civics dean, who is such the ninja on government. I want to talk to him about what's happening in the world right now in a wildly destabilized Middle East and a wildly destabilized House of Representatives, and how the two might actually overlap in the Venn diagram of what's going on in the world right now. Richard Greene is a great resource for that. He'll join us the second half of this hour. Then to kick off the first half of the next hour, the second hour, Joe Ferrullo joins us. He is a top 3 favorite Catholics for me. Yeah, I would say he's in my top 3. And he will join us. There is
Who are the other two? That's what I want to know.
Well, Tim Conway Jr. is one of them.
Oh, okay.
He's a fallen Catholic, is what I would call him. But maybe he's not so fallen. I don't know.
All right.
But he's, but he is in my top 3.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Pope, number 1.
Okay.
So that's your top 3. Yeah. Thank you. All right. And Joe Ferrullo edits and is editor-in-chief, in fact, of a Catholic newsletter that's very powerful and tracks, I'm going to say in a pretty objective way, a lot of the stuff that comes out of the Catholic Church and the papacy and what it represents and the latest remarks from the Pope on what's going on in the Middle East. But the Pope has made a lot of remarks before the violence broke out on the gay community and on problems the church has legally nationwide with, as you know, all the allegations and indeed the problems and, shall we say, the indisputable fact that the church has sanctioned, in a sense, or looked the other way as some pretty nasty things have happened under the roof of many churches nationwide and worldwide. So
Unforgivable.
Yeah, he'll talk about that as well. And then finally, Karen Dawn comes in on Mondays with a word around animals, and she kind of does a segment to update us on what's happening with animals. And there's some good news in California from the world of animals today. Well, let's get started. No, I wanted a... thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right. This guy Well, he's written a book on terrorism in the Middle East. Before, let me just put my credibility glasses on. There's something up here. Enid says, when you put together the Mark Thompson show, you gave my husband and I a little raft after being loyal KGO listeners for 35 years. Congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. We look forward to many more years with you. Dwight and Enid, come on, Dwight and Enid with a 50 to start the day. Big
Really
shout
nice.
out.
Big shout out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really, really cool, Enid. You are so lovely. Thank you so much. Really, really great.
Thank you so much.
And Wes as well.
Big shout out.
Thank you, guys. And Jim Slayton, I think it was first in with a $5 today.
Big shout
Thank you.
out.
Super stickers and super chats during the show. If you have a super chat at all, we'll get it on right away. So thank you for that. That's going on in the live chat now. You can make contributions after the fact as well. We had a $200 contribution after the fact. And anyway, that's all put to the side for the moment as we welcome in a guy, as I was saying. He wrote a book on the rise of terrorism and radical Islam, I believe, in the Middle East. I've just ordered the book, so haven't read it yet. But when it comes to Middle East politics and Middle East history, he is a great stop for us. How about it for John Rothmann, everybody? John, I wonder if you could give me your take on things first, and then I wonder if we can just do a little bit of history, because there are a bunch of major misunderstandings when it comes to the parties involved in this latest violence.
This has been a very rough 50+ hours. The brutal, barbaric action by Hamas, the brutal murder of innocent civilians, the slaying of innocent young people at a music concert, the kidnapping of old and young, including a Holocaust survivor, the threat today, as you reported at the top, that if Israel hits back at Gaza without warning, the Hamas people say they will execute these hostages one by one, with a camera filming the whole thing. This is tragic, and I want to start out by just telling you that this has nothing to do with anything more or less than the right of Israel to exist as a nation. Hamas has a covenant. In its covenant, it writes from the Haditha, if a Jew should hide behind a rock or a tree, let the rock or the tree cry out, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him. That is the essence of Hamas's philosophy. One of the most interesting aspects of all of this is the complete national unity in Israel. All of you understand there have been severe political divisions in the country. Those divisions have now faded. Benjamin Netanyahu is united with his opposition, they with him, and with the Israeli people, who are determined to overcome this moment of horror. Almost inconceivable. Some have asked how it is possible for a nation like Israel to be caught without knowledge of what was happening. Remember what happened to us on December 7th, 1941. Remember what happened to us on September the 11th of 2001. Part of the game of the terrorist is this. I want to draw a difference too, Mark, if I can. This is not nation against nation. This is not 50 years ago when the Yom Kippur War or October War broke out, when you had Egypt and Syria aligned in a war against Israel. This is a war by terrorists who are fighting it as a terrorist war. If you watch, as I have, riveted to the news reports on every network, you can see the unanimity of distress. And one other point that I think is important. Joe Biden on Saturday delivered a marvelous statement offering the unconditional support of the United States of America to Israel. But the Republicans have also joined in this statement. They too understand. In other words, aside from a few outliers, and there are always people on the extreme left and the extreme right, support for Israel is deep and wide. And so the next few days and weeks are going to be extremely difficult, with hostages being held and the sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. This is a moment of great tragedy. And the Israelis, and I must add the Jewish people, understand this threat, and they are, I believe, resolved in their fortitude to withstand even this desperate attack by terrorists.
Hamas is a terrorist mobster-like mafia that runs Gaza. Gaza is a place that is packed in, I think it's one of the most, populous
densely populated places
in the world. Thank you. And it's ruled by this group, Hamas, this terrorist group, supported by Iran. I wonder if you could speak to the situation in Gaza and the relationship between Israel and Gaza. Israel was in Gaza, right? I mean, there were actually people living there. There were farmers growing things there, and
there were settlements, Jewish settlements in Gaza.
When was that? That was. Go ahead. I'm sorry, John.
Under the leadership of Ariel Sharon in the 2000s, Israel withdrew from Gaza. They withdrew all their settlements, all their settlers, everything. And the Israelis said, let this be the test of whether or not we can truly have a peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. What we have seen is Hamas, which, by the way, threw the Palestinian Authority out of Gaza in a brutal action. They were throwing leaders of the Palestinian Authority off the roof of buildings.
Explain what the Palestinian Authority is.
The Palestinian Authority, which is led by Mahmoud Abbas, leads at this moment the West Bank. Israel seized in 1967 as a result of a war of aggression by Egypt and Jordan. They seized the West Bank from Jordan and Gaza, which was controlled by Egypt. These two areas, Israel was willing to compromise, make a deal, and you will recall the peace treaty or the agreement that was signed between Israel and Egypt, which opened up the door to a peace agreement between Israel and Jordan, which opened up the agreement for the United Arab Emirates and, well, actually the Abraham Accords, so that there is now a modicum, if you will, of relations. And we're on the verge of an agreement. The United States is brokering the agreement with Saudi Arabia. What Hamas has done is to break all lines of possibility for peace. And may I point out, the real culprit may well be Iran, for Hamas could not do what it is doing without Iran. And there is no doubt about the culpability of Iran, which, by the way, underlines why the Israelis were so concerned about Iran having a nuclear capability. Can you imagine what the situation would be today if Iran had a nuclear bomb? And you opened with something that is equally important that involves Iran. Lebanon is really a fiction. And Hezbollah, headed by Nasrallah, is in charge of southern Lebanon. They have over 150,000 missiles aimed at Israel. And the fear, and you just described it, is that Israel will have to fight a two-front war. That is, that with Iran's consent, Nasrallah, Hezbollah, will let those missiles fly. And if they do, the Israelis are in frankly, deep distress. Iron Dome works, but not when it's confronted with innumerable missiles flying their way. And there is another question. If elections were held on the West Bank, we know that Hamas would win. Will Hamas now on the West Bank organize those kinds of demonstrations against Israel? And what does it mean for Arabs inside of Israel? Will they prove to be a fifth column? There are so many variables and possibilities. One of the most important things to come out of this, Mark, is the vulnerability of Israel and the determination of Hamas, not just to hit Israelis, but to hit Jews. And I want to point out to you that around the world, including in our own country, police are staking out Jewish institutions, synagogues, temples, Jewish community centers, because of a fear that there will be some action against Jews. This is something we need to understand. And if you wonder about why there seems to be, on the part of Israel and Jews, this sense of tremendous fear, you understand it now. Remember what Hamas says. They will kill Jews wherever they find them. And that's an important point.
Yes, there is so much underpinning this, Even the creation of the State of Israel was something that was forged in the shadow of one of the worst atrocities in human history, I'm talking
And
about the
may I
Holocaust.
point out, when you allude to the Holocaust, that one of the people now being held by Hamas is a Holocaust survivor. For Israelis, this is something. I listened to Yair Lapid, one of the leaders of the opposition. I knew his father, Tony, very well. Yair Lapid, who has served in the Israeli government and may once again serve in the Israeli government, pointed out that his father was a Holocaust survivor. And in a very emotional interview, which appeared on CNN very early this morning, he referred to it, not because they want to invoke the Holocaust, but because the memory of Jew hatred, which is what this represents, is real. If you don't believe me, do me a favor, all of you listening, Google Hamas covenant. All you have to do is read the covenant of Hamas. They're embracing the protocols of the elders of Zion, the conspiracy theories, their support for radical Islam. All you have to do is take a look at it to understand why this is not a normal, rational war, because what Hamas is waging is an irrational war, not just against Israel, but against Jews.
All right, now to a couple of questions, if I can just,
Sure.
press this, and then I really did want to get into a little history. By the way, just to John's point, the Wall Street Journal reported over the weekend that officers of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had worked with Hamas since August to devise the air, land, and sea incursions. This is the most significant breach, of course, of Israel's borders since that Yom Kippur War that John was just referring to. And I would say this also: you couldn't look at this operation, John, without even reading this Wall Street Journal thing and getting this journalism related to Iran's hand in all of this. You couldn't look at this kind of wide-ranging attack where there was such a tremendous use of manpower and also of arms, weaponry, missiles, and tactics. You couldn't possibly look at that and not know that Iran was behind it.
100%. And now the question is, how will the administration respond? How will the West respond? And we're going to hear a lot about this in the days ahead. One of the reasons why we have sent the Gerald R. Ford battleship into the Middle East with all the appropriate support systems is because if Lebanon, that is to say, Nasrallah, who is using Lebanon as a base, begins to fire missiles at Israel, all bets are off. And by the way, the Israelis are prepared to respond. And the question is, how do you do it in a way which limits damage? Do you know that one of the things that is so interesting, Israel, as Hamas itself admitted this morning, gives warning before they bomb. They give warning so that innocent people can be moved out of the way. And Hamas is saying, if we are hit without warning, we will take each one of our hostages individually and take them out and shoot them, and we'll do it on camera. That is barbarism without any question.
And now to some of the questions that
Sure.
encircle this whole issue. This from Michael D. Has not Israel too committed acts of terrorism in recent years with their violent attacks on the Palestinians? You can call Hamas terrorists, but I see terror committed on each side. Speak to that, please.
Yeah, with all due respect, Israel is not a terrorist nation. In fact, it's been in the forefront of fighting terrorism. The tragedy is that those who fight Israel from Hamas use terror tactics. Israel has never used such tactics, nor would they. In fact, if they were truly terrorists, as some would imply, the question then would be, why do they give warning for women and children and men to move before they bomb? It is an absurd argument. There is no symmetry between the barbaric tactics of Hamas and what Israel has done in acts of self-defense.
I think parachuting into a music festival and wantonly mowing down all of those young people who were enjoying the festival, I mean, literally just shooting them as they ran.
or
Sorry, I don't think
into,
that there's anything that you can't both sides that. That is a grotesque
there is no
horror.
equivalency. There is no equivalency to the horror being committed by Hamas and Israel.
The Palestinians were going to get most of what they wanted. Arafat turned it down. That speaks to the peace accord that was shaped. And this goes a little bit of Middle East history or history of the region, John. It is true that the off-ramps provided that might have actually been the start of peace, they've never been taken by Palestinian leadership like Arafat.
There was an attempt with the Oslo Accords exactly 30 years ago. And Arafat, who was a terrorist and admitted he was a terrorist, gave up terrorism and said, let's make peace. Tragically, Hamas opposed any agreement, even then. And you will recall, Hamas took over in Gaza after the death of Arafat and controls Gaza completely. That's the tragedy. Is there a possibility for peace? People talk about a two-state solution. You cannot, and we've learned this because of the geography of the Middle East. Look how close Gaza is to Tel Aviv. I could drive about 35 minutes from Tel Aviv to get to Gaza, and I did that trip many times. And so you're talking about very narrow areas. Now think about the West Bank. At its narrowest, prior to the Six-Day War, Israel was 9 miles wide. The intention in the Six-Day War, which thank God the Arabs failed to do, was to divide Israel and conquer from both sides. But that is the danger. That is why Israel always speaks about the importance of geography. But I again want to repeat, Israel withdrew from Gaza completely, withdrew every settlement, every settler, offered help to do anything that was needed to be done in order to secure a peace. And what did the Israelis receive in response? They received Hamas and terror.
Sadly, John is so right that this ruling party governing party in Gaza is Hamas. And Hamas does get money, a lot of money, doesn't go to the people of the Gaza. In fact, it goes into the sophisticated tunnels that you've now seen used for this terrorism. It goes into weaponry. Again, I'd love to say, there's something happening there in Gaza that's positive. But the reality is, it's an area ruled by terror. That said, I think there are many who live in Gaza, probably most who live in Gaza, that don't want to live under Hamas terror. But
they don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice.
Hamas took the Palestinian Authority, which was ruling Gaza, and threw them out. And murdered most of the leaders from the Palestinian Authority who were in Gaza, killing their own people, you understand. It is a genuine tragedy. Now, let me point out that the odds are, Mark, that before the next time we talk on Wednesday, Israel will take ground action in Gaza. And somebody said to me, why don't they just obliterate the Palestinians? Well, the answer is the war is not against Palestinians. Israel and the Palestinians ultimately have to make a peace. That was the whole point of the Oslo process. But it is a tremendous danger when Hamas refuses not only to make peace, but embraces terror. Don't listen to me, my friends. Listen to the news reports. Listen to the anguish of the parents, the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, the brothers. And remember that the Israelis are under the gun. They cannot afford to lose, because if they lose it all.
Amanda is representing again an argument that I often hear. Palestine, and we'll get to that in a second, she says, but I think she means Palestinians go through this every single day at the hands of the Israeli government. When she says go through this, I don't know. I mean, just speak to the nature of life. And again, I don't know, Amanda, exactly what you mean, but first of all, Palestine doesn't exist anymore. So when you refer to Palestine, I don't know exactly what region you're talking about. John, can you speak to that? And then the treatment of Palestinians and those in the West Bank areas under Israeli rule.
Palestine, as it is defined today, is ruled by the Palestinian Authority. It is the West Bank of what was the Kingdom of Jordan. Gaza separated itself. Hamas and the Palestinian Authority have been at war with each other. There is no unified Palestinian state. But I want the listener, and I'm happy to respond, to note that Hamas has ruled the Gaza Strip. And look at the mess the Gaza Strip is in. And when I point this out, that Hamas has ruled for years now, more than a decade, and yet look at the result. By the way, there is no moral equivalency in terms of the Israelis. In fact, if you must know the truth, do you know where most Palestinians in Gaza work? They work in Israel. They're paid people who come in and work. They are the ones that are in trouble now, for they cannot cross into Israel. Their source of income has been cut off. And now the Israelis are responding with great vigor. They're cutting off electricity and water and everything because they're trying to stop what Hamas is doing. Will the people of Gaza rise up? The answer probably is no. They don't have the power to do it. The victims here are not just the Jews in Israel and the people of Israel. It is the Palestinians who live in the Gaza. Hamas is doing a great injustice to the people they theoretically represent.
Here's a super chat. Edward says, what about Shireen Abu Aideh, who was killed by Israeli forces? What about Israel destroying Palestinian homes in the West Bank for their citizens? Speak to some of that, John, if you would.
Sure. What you're talking about is a journalist
right.
Who was killed in the process of covering a story. No one knows for sure who killed her. It could have been a Palestinian bullet. It could have been an Israeli bullet. The point is, that's one of the dangers when you cover a war zone. And that's the simple truth. And those of us who have been in the media understand that. Take a look today, whether you're watching CNN or MSNBC or Fox, all of the reporters are identified as reporters. She was not. Doesn't excuse the fact that she died. But the fact that the accusation can be made that Israelis killed her is absurd. And yes, it is true. The Israelis have used a method that was first adopted by the British, that if a house is used as a place where terrorism emanates, that house will be destroyed. The Israelis have used that method, fortunately, not very often, because the Palestinians generally understand that the only way to have peace is not through terror. The destruction which is taking place in Gaza right now is taking place because of Hamas's actions. And let me point out to you that on the West Bank, which is ruled by the Palestinian Authority, those who oppose Israel are demonstrating. Those who favor Hamas are demonstrating. Nobody is stopping them from expressing their point of view. It's very important to understand the distinction. There is, Mark, I regret to say, an attempt to say that Israel has no right to exist, that all of these problems stem from Israel. Let me point out that since its creation in 1948, Israel has been under constant attack by many in the Arab world who deny Israel's right to exist. I want to emphasize that Egypt, Jordan, and the Abraham Accords, that Israel has developed normal relations with many Arab countries, that it is possible to have peace, but with radical Islam, with Iran, with Hezbollah, and with Hamas, all of whom are not objecting to anything more or less than the simple fact that Israel exists. You want to solve the Middle East problem, they say? Throw Israel out. Destroy Israel. And the answer, of course, of the world is no, we won't.
The other thing I would say, John, and I'm so glad that you make these points emphatically and clear-headedly, but and I would say it's always struck me as odd because this is a real plight. You know, if you give people credit, not so much Hamas because they are, as you say, sworn to just drive the Jews into the sea type thing, you know, but if you give the Arab community the credit of being involved in a real plight for freedom, for their own. I'm wondering why there wasn't historically through the many decades any help from countries that align themselves with that plight. I'm talking about, for example, Egypt. Egypt borders Gaza. I'm wondering about other nations in the region that they seem united against Israel, although now, as you say, there have been some peace, both offerings and some peace deals brokered. But I'm wondering, bottom line, why didn't the Arab states in that region, why don't they speak more full-throatedly or allow for the immigration even of many of these from Gaza into their country?
First of all, the answer is that the Arab world for years rejected Israel's right to exist. They fought 3 wars against Israel that were vigorously attempts to destroy the Jewish state. Ultimately, a philosophy emerged, though, that Israel was not going anywhere. And then moderate Arab states, primarily Sunni Arab states, agreed that they would live in the world with Israel. As Anwar Sadat said before his assassination, we may not like them, but we recognize you are here and we are willing to work with you. There has to be the recognition that Israel isn't going anywhere. I want to remind everybody that when the United Nations voted to partition Palestine in 1947, they voted to partition Palestine into 2 states, one Arab, one Jewish. The Israelis accepted the idea of partition. The Arab world rejected it. The notion that the Arab world would accept Israel seemed impossible, but I'm hopeful. If Egypt and Jordan joined with the Abraham Accords and now maybe even Saudi Arabia are willing to establish peace treaties or at least relations with Israel, that leads me to hope that maybe, Golda Meir once said, we can forgive them for killing our children, but we will never forgive them for making their children kill ours. It is the essence of it. Jews and Arabs, Israelis and Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, and Jews can live together. But if you are part of an organization like Hamas, which says, no, there is no room for Jews, they must be killed, how do you make peace with somebody like that? And I want to point out, I do it emphatically, listen now to what Israelis are saying. They want peace, even in the midst of the terror that has struck Israel. The Israelis are saying, let's try, let's work out a way. And I believe that ultimately, Mark, is the answer. Perhaps we will descend to such depths that we will have no choice but to rise and create a better world.
I have to wrap up. We're out of time, but just because you mentioned the Saudis, want to underscore what I think is one of the reasons that the timing on this was what it was. There was essentially a deal brokered with the Saudis that would normalize relations between the Saudis and the Israelis. And to destabilize that seemed to be an Iran agenda item. And as we know, Iran was very much behind this. I just documented it before, the Wall Street Journal piece, et cetera. I wonder if you could speak to the timing of this. They also caught Israel, let's face it, John, doing other stuff, like worrying about their government, their protests in the street, about their government, about Netanyahu. So
Mark,
this timing is not accidental.
I think they timed it to 2 things. First, the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, a war which changed the face of the Middle East, which opened the door, even though it was a war, it opened the door for peace. Remember, the war was in 73, Sadat came to Jerusalem in 77. Out of the ashes of war, there was a hope for peace. But there was another thing, and you hit the nail on the head. The last thing that Iran wants is any kind of agreement with Saudi Arabia. Remember, Saudi Arabia and Iran may be mortal enemies. And our job is to try to create a situation where Saudi Arabia can be brought into the Abraham Accords. I can't tell you what the result will be now because of this terrible tragedy, but I can tell you the next few weeks and months are not going to be easy. And I regret to say we will be talking about this not only on your program, but on my podcast on a regular basis. The whole world is watching. And while we are speaking, I know that Benjamin Netanyahu is about to speak again. I know that President Biden is about to make remarks, I believe, tomorrow. He's meeting now with the various world leaders and congressional leaders. And we in the United States have to get our house in order. This is something else. The House of Representatives is crippled today because it has no speaker. And I want to remind you that and if we had time, I would talk about it with you, that Donald Trump made the most outrageous statement on Friday on a podcast saying that immigration to this country from the South is poisoning the blood of our country. That's a direct quote. Can you imagine a president of the United States or a former president making such an outrageous statement? And then his spokesperson saying this is a normal phrase. Nonsense. And the idea that anyone in this country, particularly a former president, would speak about poisoning the blood of our country is terrible. It is, I hate to say it, the ultimate, because Hamas says the same thing about Israel, that the Jews corrupt us with their blood. I mean, these kinds of absurd statements deserve repudiation by all. We got to watch this week, Mark, and probably by Wednesday, when I appear with you in our regularly scheduled meeting, we will have a better sense of what happens in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, and I'm going to get into the House Representative of Richard Greene, who's standing by anyway. I did want to just, we're way over time, but Wes is asking, could Iran have gotten from the Russians this information and intel and then shared it? You know, Israeli positions, there are a bunch of pieces of information. The Russians could have gotten it from Trump, for all we know. There is I saw.
I have to tell you, I don't believe that to be true. Hamas worked hard to assemble what they did. There is no question they received intelligence and support from Iran. I believe that the fact that Russia and Iran are now firmly aligned leads to many, many questions, and that gets us to Ukraine, which we're not going to talk about today. But I can say matter-of-factly, in the next few days, what happens in terms of Lebanon with Hezbollah and what happens with Iran as more and more proof is produced of Iran's financing, backing, arming Hamas, this will become a true litmus test, how we proceed.
Well, and then, as I say, you've got
for having me on today.
I'm so glad we could. And as I mentioned, Hezbollah and Lebanon. This could really widen this conflict to other
100%.
parts of the region. So we'll talk to John on Wednesday. Around the Political World with John Rothmann is his podcast, which he'll produce daily, and you can subscribe and grab it. John, so appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. John Rothmann.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thanks for your comments. I've seen a bunch of them. I'll try to respond to as many as I can. We're trying to also get to our guests as they wait. Kim, if it's okay with you, I'll get right to Richard. I also promised everyone that we do some fun things and some anniversary-related things. This is our one-year anniversary of this show. We took it from radio and brought it onto YouTube, and it's really grown and it's been very successful, and we're really grateful to you because you've shared it. You shared it in places like Facebook. You've shared it elsewhere, and I really appreciate that. Albert, I'm going to ask you, you're the producer of this. Should I get right to Richard, don't you think? And then we can do the shout-outs after that?
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. So,
Albert, thank you.
The deal on Richard is an amazing one. You may remember him. I had him on the radio with me a few times.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He's called Richard Greene the civics dean because he brings the workings of government to people nationwide and worldwide. He is such a remarkable both consultant when it comes to politics and also mind when it comes to so many of the things going on in today's world. Appreciate him taking a minute to join us during this very serious time. And I want to speak about how what's happening in American politics in the House of Representatives can actually overlap in not such a great way with what's happening in the Middle East. How about it for Richard Greene? Hi, Richard.
Hey, buddy. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was quite the experiment, and it seems to have worked out so far. Really appreciate you being here. So,
Well, everything you do turns to gold. And I told you that I saw you, in fact, in one of the greatest movies of all time, The American President. I don't know if your listeners even know that you were the star of that film.
well, I love the way you characterized it, the star of that film. Yes. It was a pivotal scene. I will say that. And I know that because of the director of the movie, Rob Reiner, came in and was talking to Richard Dreyfuss, and I was on the chair like adjacent to it. I was just overhearing it, and he said, "Now this is a critical scene in the movie," and that's how I knew that I wouldn't get cut out. But thank you for recognizing my work. Yeah, that was the Sorkin movie, American President. So. Richard, you know, you have done so much and interacted with world leaders and politicians across the board. First, a general take on what's happening in the Middle East, and then can you speak to the House of Representatives, which is in such chaos, and how that might, as I say, interconnect with American policy in the Middle East right now?
I mean, there is so much going on. By the way, your last guest, John, was very eloquent and very powerful, and I agree with most of what he was saying. I mean, this is such a cluster, you know what? First of all, I've been to Israel many, many, many times, and I'm still shocked that the Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, didn't see this coming. So that is going to be a very interesting discussion for a long period of time. But my prediction is that because of what's going on in Israel, that Kevin McCarthy may in fact be returned even on an interim basis to be speaker to help us through this period of time.
What?
Initially he said I'm done, but then he just recently said that he would be willing to serve in any way, shape, or form if that would help bring the Republican conference together, and even for a short time. And then of course we have Donald Trump, who said he's willing to be the interim speaker, which I think would perhaps be the most chaotic thing ever. But it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And, you know, I think the Trump part probably, you know, is just one of those things to take up a news cycle for 20. I don't know how seriously but the other options are not so great either in the GOP, are they?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't see how they're going to get to 218 without Democrats, because, you know, they just have a very, very slim majority, the Republicans do. And you have 8 bomb throwers who don't like Kevin McCarthy, who seems to be the consensus choice of the vast majority of the rest of the Republicans. I think Steve Scalise is the most respected, most likely person. But Jim Jordan is, first of all, I think totally unqualified and a total divisive guy. But
they're both election deniers, aren't they? I mean, I suppose Jordan would be head of the parade, but there are plenty in behind him. I can't find a proposed leader of the House that, you know, will acknowledge that Joe Biden legitimately won the presidency. Yeah,
well, I think that ship has sailed. I mean, I think that conversation is getting old as we ramp up to 2024. Okay. But, you know, listen, the Republican Party is what the Republican Party is. And as someone who wants good governance, I actually am rooting, except for helping Israel and, you know, the Ukraine and doing the things that government has to do. I am actually cheering on the sidelines for the maximum amount of chaos.
Well, the maximum amount of chaos, Richard, would involve the shutting down of the government, which I think is a very, very big potential now without McCarthy. You have nobody in charge of the GOP to wrangle that crew and avoid a government shutdown. Many of them want it. They hate government. They're winning every day that the government is shut down.
Exactly. Listen, of course, no one wants a government shutdown. I think it's ridiculous, it's completely unnecessary. But the vast majority of people who support the Republicans and will continue to vote for them have no idea how the Republican Party is doing what they're doing. And if there is chaos at some point, I think people will begin to understand that we cannot have a party committed to shutdowns and complete chaos running the country in the future. My focus is on 2024 because the cake is baked for the rest of this 2 years.
Because you are such a political maven, let me just ask you about the breaking news of this morning, which is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has declared his candidacy as an independent. He will run as an independent. Speak to that ripple effect on the coming race.
Oh my God, this is fascinating. And I've known Bobby Kennedy not well, but I've known him for 25 years. I've gone skiing with him. I've gone falconing with him. He's truly one of the most brilliant human beings I've ever met. And by the way, I do not think he's an anti-Semite. I don't believe a lot of the things that people say about him. But the Democratic Party, in my opinion, brought this on. Bobby Kennedy, who is being managed by Dennis Kucinich, both hardcore Democrats, desperately wanted to have a democratic open primary debate and discussion and competition. The Democratic Party not only didn't allow that, which you can understand because they're all in for Biden-Harris, but they treated him like he was a pariah, like he had, some communicable disease. They wanted nothing to do with him. They wouldn't give him any opportunity to even have a serious conversation about his vision for the Democratic Party and his vision for America. I'm not saying I support him. I'm saying I saw this coming a long time ago.
But let me just follow up. You're saying because of his treatment as a pariah, it forced him into this third-party candidacy thing? So to press that, you're saying if they'd engaged with him at all, he likely wouldn't have declared this?
If they said, listen, you're a Kennedy, you're a lifelong Democrat, you and Marianne Williamson and whoever else wants to compete for the majority vote of the Democrats in the United States, go at it. This is a Democratic Party. We're going to conduct democracy. And if you win, you win. And if you don't win and Joe Biden gets the nomination, we're going to count on your support. And they would have had Bobby Kennedy's support for Joe Biden had they treated him like this. I know Bobby well enough to say that that's true.
The Democrats, and this is, again, my beef with a lot of the stuff with the Democrats is that it's institutional Democrats that run the party. They're always called progressive and communist and Marxist. That's the farthest from what they are. I think the reality is they're quite institutional, and they didn't want to primary Joe Biden. They didn't want any kind of competition for Joe Biden. Isn't that essentially what you're saying, Richard?
Yeah, and it does remind people of what the Democratic Party, the DNC, did to Bernie, because they favored Hillary. And that is not a good look for the Democratic Party. And by the way, I have to tell you, I'm at a conference here in Boulder, Colorado. I just spoke to Douglas Brinkley, who's a historian. I've been speaking to a lot of people, including members of Congress. Behind the scenes, people do not want Joe Biden to be the Democratic nominee. They don't. They think he's too old. They think he's vulnerable. And the point, I even had this conversation with Andrew Yang. And I said to Andrew Yang, what happens if Joe Biden, after he is nominated, right, the last 3 months of the campaign, has a 19-second Mitch McConnell brain freeze? It's done, because Kamala Harris would then step in, and I do not believe that she could be elected president. So this is bizarre. So not only do we have the oldest president running for re-election, the most unpopular vice president who would be a fail-safe for someone who is that old, and we now have Cornel West running, we have Joe Manchin potentially running, and we have Bobby Kennedy running. Mark, I've never seen anything like this in all my years in politics, and it's impossible. Anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen is on drugs. This is a very fluid situation.
And yet the alternatives, I'll let you go here in a second, but the alternatives that you've just mentioned, that is to say those who stepped up, they don't seem super viable either. Cornel West, Marianne Williamson. Again, I'm not saying that some of what they say doesn't land with me. I'm just talking about their viability politically.
But here's their viability. Jill Stein probably cost Hillary Clinton the election. Ralph Nader definitely cost Al Gore the election. Third parties are never going to be elected. Marianne Williamson is not going to be president. Cornel West is not going to be president. But when you win key battleground states by 10,000, 12,000 votes, they can actually and very well might change the election. So I'm concerned about Bobby coming in. I just encourage the Democratic Party to say, okay, listen, we're going to invite Bobby back in. Let's have an open primary. Let's have debates about the issues and let the best man or woman win. That's what democracy is all about. And that should be what this party does.
Well, the problem with America is that we have given, and our founders, I think, did a lot of this. We've created a system, essentially in the Electoral College, that gives minority voices, and when I say minorities, you know what I'm talking about, political minorities,
right.
An oversized say in who will be the chief executive. It's absolute insanity. The Electoral College is insanity.
Do you want some good civics behind the scenes?
Yes, give us some good civics behind the scenes, and then we got to say goodbye. Please do it.
Okay, so for anyone who's listening who may live in the state of Virginia or know someone who lives in the state of Virginia, there is an election in the first Tuesday of November this year, 2023, where every single state senator in Virginia is on the ballot. Every single House of Representatives person in the state government in Virginia is on the ballot. If Democrats can hold the state legislature, the lower house, and pick up 1 or 2 or 3 senators who support the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, Virginia can add 13 electoral votes to end the Electoral College through this National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which already has 205. So it would go to 218. We only need 270, and then every person's vote will be the same. So
wow.
Get out to vote in Virginia. That state is critical to making this happen. And yeah, I think the Electoral College is one of the worst, most anti-democratic things in the history of so-called democracy.
Yeah. Richard, you're great. Come visit again. I appreciate you taking time out of your conference there to join us. Richard Greene, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Happy anniversary.
See you, pal. Thank you so much.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Albert, thank you very much for helping to hook up Richard Greene. He's really great. And a surprisingly clean signal from, he just stepped out of the conference and Richard Greene was able to connect without any, who do I give credit for? Was that Albert?
Albert, thank you.
All right. I'll give credit to Albert, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, Richard did a great job.
Richard really is the guy who deserves the credit. Yeah, it's true. He's great. He'll be back, and you can tell he knows the X's and O's of politics so very well. Albert, I promised before I get to one of my top 3 Catholics who will join us. He's amazing, and he's the editor-in-chief of this Catholic publication, really keeps an eye on all things Catholic worldwide. I promised some shout-outs, then we've gotten some good ones. I'm in Virginia, very red, says Suzanne. Yeah, I'll bet. Kim says, must have been a good cellular connection, says Gordon. Thank you, Gordon, for helping us dissect that. Daniel Zachary, I live in Virginia as well. I'll vote. Away with this Electoral College. There you go. And excellent guest, says Kim. Yeah, really like that.
Kim, how are you?
No, it's a different Kim. The word is that we're getting some greetings in for our anniversary. This is our 1-year anniversary. And I'm sorry that this week appears to have wrapped up in it a lot of really bad news, crisis news. You know, war is awful, and civilians who are the casualties of war, just, you know, what can I say? It's one of the most galling aspects of war. And there are wars everywhere. I mean, we've been involved in Ukraine. There's a brutal civil war in Sudan, and Somalia and Yemen, and so this latest one rivets our attention: the wanton terrorism and death associated with this attack over the weekend, and of course the hostage taking. So we'll get to all of that. It's not that we ignore it, even as we turn toward lighter things. But I promised you some light, so here you go.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, I got some good anniversary greetings, I think. Lay an anniversary greeting on me for my first year. It's all of us working hard to make this happen. Who do you have? Albert, who is it?
I got a celebrity greeting
A
here.
celebrity! America loves celebrities. I'm ready. It's
fantastic.
Hey, Mark.
We just want to say a heartfelt congratulations.
Congratulations,
yes,
Mark.
John
for your
Cryer and Lisa
anniversary
Joyner.
of the
Podcast?
show. It's a show.
Is it a movie?
I
He does a lot of
it's-
voiceover.
he does a lot of voices. But is it a show?
I mean, we've watched.
Yes. No, we haven't.
Oh, can you watch a podcast?
Yeah, you can. You can watch a podcast, but it's not. It's just gonna just sit there. There's not a whole lot it'll do. At any rate,
Congratulations!
but congratulations, and we're really proud of you. We're proud of what you've done with this
Medium.
thing.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you. I think
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was.
Well, you've done the show from their house before, so you know.
I did. They actually should know the show better.
Right.
Because it was done. Kim is correct. It was done from their home because I lost internet at my home. You know, they were doing that thing. They were doing work on the line, blah, 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 or the electricity was going off. I forget what it was. And they stepped up and let me use their place. You can send us a one-year anniversary greeting. It's all week. We're celebrating it. Send a short video or audio, less than 30 seconds, to happyanniversarymts@gmail.com. And I got a cool message from Kim. Albert, can I read the message? I don't like to do anything without your approval.
Yeah, actually, on the rundown, I have a couple emails for you to go for shout-outs.
Oh, do you? Okay, great. So let me go to the rundown. Thank you.
Albert, thank you.
I believe one of them is from Kim, so I think that'll...
That will dovetail with my
There's a
existing
plan here. We need to
Yeah.
stick to it.
That's right. If
I don't know what you're doing. Whoever is producing
this thing has no idea what they're doing.
I think actually he does have an idea. I'm the one who doesn't have an idea. Mark, Kim, Albert, and Tony gets a mention. I always love it when Tony gets a mention.
Nice.
Wow, a year already, Kim says. This is Kim who's written this letter. Human nature allows us to connect with the consistent things in our lives, the things that we can depend on. I am so grateful that you quickly mobilized to create a platform on YouTube for us to continue to enjoy the Mark Thompson Show. In so many ways, it is better than it was on Station X. I love the many interviews and the regular features of the show and look forward to listening every day at some juncture, be it live or not. I don't know that I can properly articulate how meaningful it's been having your voices to listen to and your faces to see over the past year. For several months, I was ill, and all I had, really, on a consistent basis, was the entertainment, the news, and the laughter of the Mark Thompson Show. Mark, Kim, Albert, and Tony, you brought brilliant colors and light to my world. Thank you. I believe there are a lot of people out there who feel such a connection and enjoy so greatly what you have shaped and molded for our benefit. May you continue to thrive and grow in the ensuing years. Congratulations on your success. I look forward to being entertained for many years to come. That is from Kim C. Wow, that was really nice.
It's really touching, and I'm glad you're better.
And then this email from Becky. Hello, gang. Mark, Kim, John, Albert, and Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Whoops, and Courtney. That's kind of nice. She got a mention. Right. I so enjoy your show, in capital letters, which is that means that they're yelling it, right?
Why are you yelling?
Right.
Yeah.
I, too, like so many women, had breast cancer, double mastectomy.
Oh, no.
Did chemo, pulled through it with the help of my great hubby. Had my left knee replaced December of 2020 and my right knee replaced June of 2021.
Oh, she's been through it.
Best thing I did for myself, she says. New knees. When Michelle Pereira quit and Tony McEwing retired from Fox 11, those are two morning personalities in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Then, this is in capital letters, the Mark Thompson Show went off the air. That was strike three.
Uh-oh.
They were in capital letters. That's why I would.
Why are you yelling?
Okay. I was a bit lost, but then you came back on YouTube, and it's great. I still do not like the smash with an iron rod, though.
Sorry, Becky.
With your iron rod.
She doesn't like that,
yeah.
she said. I live in Ventura, California, great beach town, and I've lived there for 32 years. Married to my Steve since 1984. Tooting my own horn, we have 2 grown, beautiful daughters. Both were married in the last 3 years. I am now a grandma to a 20-month-old granddaughter. I watch my granddaughter full-time Monday through Friday. I listen daily when I get on the elliptical at the end of the day. Keep it up. Y'all are doing great. Thanks, Becky, and thank you, Becky.
Thanks, Becky.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Albert couldn't resist the smash with your iron rod. I will say this to Becky and to Kim and all of you who've made contributions on our anniversary and also sent us notes. We have more. All you must do is receive. However you're listening, live, or if you're listening in replay, just receive.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Yes, one more. Just receive.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
That rod of equity and mercy, again, good for life, no boosters required. So.
Well, look at this comment. Michael D says, good hanging with you all. Mark, Kim, Albert, Tony, you should call it the MCAT show.
No.
Oh, no. Mark Thompson show. That's not the
by
MCAT.
the way, the only reason it's called the Mark Thompson show is because we took it from KGO, and that's what it was called there. I hate the name the Mark Thompson show. If truth be told, I can finally tell you.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Because people should know who I am, first of all. No, I had a podcast for many years, 7 years, I think we were on the air. And this is before everybody had, every other person had a podcast. Now every person has a podcast.
Right.
And when I started the podcast, and we didn't call it the Mark Thompson podcast. So I don't really love my name. And the only reason my name is in the title of the show for real is because that's exactly what it was called on KGO. And we wanted to migrate everybody over. We just thought it would be easier for people to find it. In a perfect world, I'd change the name. I really would.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Exactly. Thank you. Boy, we had some great guests planned this week. I'm just looking ahead, and I'm hoping that we're able to get to a lot of them. We'll have to balance what's going on in the Middle East with that. We also have. Did you get didn't Dan Ashley do something for us, Albert?
I was gonna save it for the second hour to stagger it, but I do have a different one that I have lined up for now.
Okay, here's a different one for now. Dan Ashley has one for next hour. We've gotten a few in, and if you want to send us a one-year anniversary, you can see it scrolling bottom of the screen. You send a short video, 30 seconds or less if you can do it, and you send it to happyanniversarymts@gmail.com. Go ahead, Albert.
Hey, everybody. Spencer Christian here, wishing a happy first anniversary to the Mark Thompson Show. I love you guys, all of you, Mark and Kim and Albert and John. I may be leaving somebody out, but hey, I'm old. But in any event, love the show, love what you do. Many, many, many more happy anniversaries to you.
Oh, come on. That's my guy. Love him, Spencer Christian. He really is terrific.
Awesome.
Friend of the show and supporter in every way. More still to come, Kim's news, and then we talk to Joe Ferrulo about the latest comments from the Pope.
Oh, maybe we should just mention this before we get to Kim's news.
Oh, thank you, Albert. Yeah, we actually have, it's our one-year anniversary.
Right?
Well, I think we have 2 spots because
like
2 people had to drop
open.
out.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Albert, thank you.
It's our one-year anniversary virtual meetup. It's Thursday, 2 glorious hours. Mark, the team, and special guests. It'll be Thursday night, 7:45 to 9:45. And we were sold out, but now we have 2 spots open because of the shift in the time. So we've limited it to 20 people because we want to be able to interact with people and talk to people and answer questions and just have conversations. So it's $50 to reserve your private link, RSV to mtsmeetup@gmail.com if you want to join us on Thursday night. mtsmeetup@gmail.com. gmail.com. I know it's really late on the East Coast, and that's one of the problems. Starting at 7:45 Pacific time is 10:45. And my East Coasters are saying, we'd like to do it, but maybe you can do it earlier next time. So the next one, I promise we'll try to do it earlier. But for now, I understand the time frame favors West Coast, 7:45 to 9:45 Thursday night. If you want to join us, 2 spots open, mtsmeetup@gmail.com. Smash the like button like a boss.
With your iron rod.
Even though Becky doesn't like it, you got to smash it. Joe Ferrillo next. Kim's News very much next. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards, home of the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red? And the Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson White? Fighting is raging. This is happening in the Middle East. The raging for a third day now between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas after its fighters launched a deadly attack against Israel over the weekend. The death toll tops 1,200 now, with thousands more injured on both sides of this conflict. At least 9 Americans are among the dead, that according to the State Department. And oil prices are also rising. This is definitely related to this eruption of war in Israel. Analysts are closely monitoring developments as Iran, a key backer of Hamas and an OPEC member, has expressed support for the Palestinian attack. Experts believe the impact on oil prices will be limited unless the conflict expands to a larger regional conflict. Here in America, the United Auto Workers strike is now in its 25th day. Union members at the Volvo Group-owned Mack Trucks also hit the picket lines today after rejecting a tentative contract agreement. Thousands of UAW members across at least 20 states remain on strike against the big 3 U.S. automakers. They are fighting over pay and over benefits as well. California Governor Gavin Newsom signing the nation's first corporate climate disclosure bills. The 2 bills that the governor signed into law Saturday will require large publicly traded and privately held corporations operating in California to disclose both their carbon footprints and how climate affects their bottom line. The laws go beyond proposed federal climate disclosure rules, which will apply only to publicly traded companies, so a little bit different in that regard. Do want to talk to you, though, about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because, yes, as mentioned earlier, he will be running as an independent, is the latest on this situation. Let's see if I can get... Sorry, I thought I could get a picture up for you. RFK running for the White House as an independent. Kennedy Jr. was running for president as a Democrat, but told supporters in Philadelphia he will be switching parties. He began his run in the spring against President Biden, the 69-year-old saying he wants to be free from taking sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't discount his impact on the election. In fact, I think it could be quite impactful. But more on that as things unfold. But he's, I'd challenge what Richard said, which is somehow that if the Democrats had engaged with him differently, he might not have declared as a third-party candidate. I mean, basically they were saying, and Richard, I wouldn't disagree with him on this, was reflecting a sentiment that you really hear in the Democratic Party, and it's not an unreasonable one, but it flies in the face of institutional politics. And here's the position. The position is, hey, we should be able to have primaries, and all of these people from Marianne Williamson to Robert F. Kennedy on down, and you could Cory Booker and others, and Cornel West, they should all be able to show up, and I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but all these people who feel as though they would be right for the chief executive chair, they should have a chance to engage in reasonable debate and consideration and be able to be in the primaries so that when the Democratic Party selects their next candidate for president, there's actually been a process by which others have had a shot. That's not the way institutional politics works. As Richard had noted, we saw it with Hillary Clinton. There's essentially a coronation. There's a and even I'd suggest in the case of Bernie Sanders, a jimmying of the process, right? You have super delegates and you have all these different ways to influence the process. So even as Bernie was doing fairly well in primaries, he never really had a chance because of the super delegate thing. The institution of the Democratic Party will always have the last word. Again, that may be another flaw in the system. So it is indeed the case that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., great name recognition, and, I think that has buoyed his candidacy in many ways, but he speaks to many people. Now as a third-party candidate, I think he'll be very consequential. And so we'll see from what basket he takes the most votes, but consequential he will be.
This is a newly discovered snail being named after a Jimmy Buffett song. The Cayo Margarita, bright yellow coral snail named after the song Margaritaville.
There's never been anything like this.
Wow.
Sounds like I've been drinking one too many margaritas over here. Scientists in Florida say they made the obvious choice in naming it for the region's signature drink, given its color and the place it lives. So there you have it. Some sad news over the weekend. Maybe you recognize celebrity chef Michael Chiarello. He has died at the age of 61. Chiarello died Friday at Queen of the Valley Medical Center in Napa. He had been hospitalized for several days after suffering from anaphylactic shock following some type of allergic reaction. Michael Chiarello owned restaurants in Napa Valley and San Francisco. He was on the Food Network. He opened his first restaurant in St. Helena in 1987. So a celebrity chef and figure around the Bay Area, Michael Chiarello has passed away at the age of 61. There is a judge that is...
Can I ask how he died at such a young age?
So it was anaphylactic shock, some type of allergic reaction. Yeah, he had been in the hospital for a couple days. I guess they couldn't... usually, if you are allergic to something, they'll give you a shot of something that lessens the effects and doesn't, involve your throat closing up. But whatever it was, the allergic reaction was so bad that the drugs must not have had an effect, and he died from it.
Wow.
So yeah, really sad. I wanted to tell you about this story in Southern California. So, a still from video footage taken from a Los Angeles Police Department dash cam. A judge is now denying the reinstatement requests of 2 Los Angeles police officers fired for playing Pokemon Go on the job. On Sunday, the LAPD released dash cam video and audio tapes of the cops ignoring a call for backup about a robbery in 2017.
What?
Instead, they were heard discussing how to catch a Pokemon character.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, the officers claim the recordings should have been dismissed in court because those were private conversations.
No?
Nope, not private if you're in a squad car that's owned by the state of California or the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Sorry. You see what it says there? More Poke calls and have the protons. Whatever. It's not that they were playing it, it's that they were ignoring calls for service. Really?
Oh, they were? They were definitely ignoring calls for service.
Yeah, they said they ignored
It was wrong,
call for
it was
backup.
stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
About a robbery in 2017, they ignored a call for backup because they were playing Pokemon Go.
Wow. Well, that's I can't justify it.
No, me neither.
I mean,
This thing is ready to pop, people.
It is. You got to have guys out there to make sure it doesn't pop.
This report, sponsored by Tenuta Winery, Tenuta Vineyards, they have some events that really do fill up fast. 3 grape stomps this month.
To be fair, that Pokemon is pretty. It's a pretty
addictive.
great game.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Sorry. Go back to Tenuta.
The 3 grape stomps this month. Space
Come
is
on
limited.
With the grape stomps. I love them.
I Love Lucy grape stomps. Super fun. October 15th, October 22nd, and October 29th. It is space limited. It's a luncheon, a catered luncheon, as well as a grape
I'd be
stomp.
willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Oh, you can better believe it. Contact Rich for pricing and information. Yes, the Mark Thompson exclusive 10% off does apply to tickets for this event. Simply say, smash it with your iron rod when you call Rich at 925-699-4576. You can see it on the screen
with
here.
Your iron rod.
And you'll get your 10% off. 925-699-4576. You can email him as well, rich@tenuta, TENUTA vineyard.com. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
My wife wants some vegetables for crudité.
I was a basketball referee.
Feels great, baby.
Who's Mark Thompson?
It's unbelievably offensive.
What he's got going here is a situation.
I was fortunate. Everyone I worked with made me better at my job.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Yeah, you know it. I'm all over it. I am very excited. Our 1-year anniversary. A lot of you have stepped up with, with video greetings and with emails that have really touched me and the crew. Everything that you send, we make sure that everybody gets to see. So thank you very much. This is our big 1-year anniversary week, and it's a week that begins with all kinds of issues globally, with the war in the Middle East, with hostilities that have included the hostage taking of Americans and all the rest. So it's a weird backdrop against which to have any sort of celebration, but celebrate we will, and we'll just try to do it in a respectful way. The conversation with Ferrulo, I hope, will be happening in a couple of moments.
He's just setting up his browser. Our stream platform doesn't support the one he was trying to use. So
I see. Wow.
Switching him over.
That's crazy. Wow. Well, it sounds to me like
What he's got going here is a situation.
Right, exactly. He's got a situation. So that gives me a moment, actually, Albert, to check in with you on, what did I want to do? I wanted to, yes, I did. I wanted to find out about the Niners. Oh, it was glorious, Albert. It was glorious, Commissioner. Tell me about the Niners. They were dominant yesterday against a very tough Cowboys team, I thought. Thoughts,
frauds.
please?
The Cowboys, very fraudulent team. I kind of knew that they weren't that great already.
Oh, is that right? You didn't see them as the big competition that everybody talked about?
I saw them. They were playing against some weaker competition. And I just don't... I'm just so used to watching the Niners. And they're so efficient and creative. And the Cowboys are just kind of like... They have a great defensive line. Michael Parsons is amazing, but I just don't feel like they're on that level with the Niners. And obviously, we beat them in the playoffs the past couple of years.
Yeah, no, historically, recent history anyway, the Niners have really owned the Cowboys. It's funny, the Niners went down and scored, and then on the ensuing couple of possessions, they were held, I think, to 3 and out, or something close to that. You were never concerned, Commissioner, that the Cowboys kind of were beginning to make some adjustments and handling them?
No, I'm like supremely confident in our team, and it's I think Brock Purdy had a national audience finally to kind of shut up the narrative that he's this small, incapable guy.
It bothers me how they talk about him. Very tough Cowboys team, Mark, says Aussie Rules. What game are you watching, Mark? Says Gil. Yeah.
No, they do have great individual players. I just don't like their coaching and their system. So that's just schematically, I just believe in the Niners a lot more.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, clearly you're right. I mean, they won 42-10. Oh my God. So exciting to watch the Niners ascend to what I hope will be if they stay healthy, a real Super Bowl run, you know. Commish, who is the team that you look at as a possible real threat to the Niners?
Well, I still think the Eagles. I think the Niners want some revenge after last season. I feel like last season we lost to the Eagles. We didn't have a chance from the start with no quarterbacks.
Sure.
We want a chance for a redo to that, but I think the Eagles don't look too great compared to last year either. So they're also still figuring it out. But they're not playing that great, and they're also 5-0. So
Yeah,
That's also
right. They've got a lot of weapons for you too. This is true what John's saying, and then I'll move on, which is, they call Purdy a system quarterback, like he's not special or very talented. They think that any system quarterback can do what Brock does. Not true. Brock is special. It really is true, Albert, that even this morning I was watching Stephen A. Smith, just because I had to get some other news after hours of Middle East. I was curious to see, and he's at the same time he's acknowledging the talent of Brock Purdy, he's also saying, you don't need that strong an arm. You have to be impressed, even though he doesn't have that strong an arm. The guy, I don't know, he's got a pretty strong vertical game. He has
the instincts. He knows where to put the ball. A lot of the throws that you see out of him, I'm surprised. A lot of Niner fans were not used to those throws with Jimmy or any of the past quarterbacks. He played 4 complete seasons in college, so I think that little experience and instincts have come naturally for him compared to all of our other guys. So I love Purdy.
Well, good stuff, Kamish. I am excited about the season continuing, and now it's time to move on, as we will.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He is the CEO and publisher of the National Catholic Reporter. He is in my top 3 Catholics. And I love his take on things. He's very objective, I think, and reasonable in terms of, some of the realities that the Catholic Church faces and just the increasingly interesting world that religion faces. Let's say I put it that way. Here he is, Joe Ferrullo, everybody, friend of the show. And
Mark, well, I am impressed that you know 2 other Catholics. That's wow.
I know many Catholics.
Oh, okay.
I know many Catholics. But you are in my top 3. And you, with the National Catholic Reporter, are charged with keeping track of much of what's talked about by the Pope and many of the dispositions and challenges that the Catholic Church faces. Can we start with what's going on in the Middle East? And can I just ask you, has the Pope commented on it? And if so, what did he say?
Well, the Church has commented on it. The Cardinal Parolin, who's the Secretary of State for the state called the Vatican, has commented on the inappropriateness of the violence and the hostage taking and calling for peace. The Israel's ambassador to the Vatican issued a statement advising the Church to avoid making false parallels as they discuss this issue. And what he means is that the Church is often caught when it comes to Israel between a rock and a hard place, which is there are a lot of Christians on the Palestine side, and so there's usually a default toward the Palestinians with a lot of their human rights issues. And then, as you know, there's a very long history of the Church being very anti-Semitic, which didn't really begin to change until the 1960s. So the Church always walks a fine line when it deals with Israel in particular.
Yeah, I'm sure the Israelis are still sensitive about about a lot of the church.
Well, they should be.
Yeah, the Pope has done some things that would qualify him as making bold remarks. I'm thinking of what he's said about the gay community, for example.
Right. No, he's been from the beginning of his papacy. He's now in year 10. He has said things that are more welcoming. Very early in his papacy, on a papal trip on the plane, he told reporters, "Who am I to judge when it comes to homosexuality and gay men and women?" Which, for the Church is a remarkable thing. The Church's official policy is that homosexuality is a disorder, and it hasn't backed away from that. But Francis, in his way, has tried to move away from it by asking the Church to be more welcoming. Just recently, he sort of opened the door even further to the idea of gay couples going to a Catholic church to get a blessing, not a marriage ceremony. He made sure that to make that clear, but a blessing, and just threw that out there as something we should be discussing, which again for the Church is a big deal.
Is he viewed as a revolutionary as a result of this? What are there schisms within the Catholic Church generally as a result of something? I mean, what he says we kind of see in the developed Western world is sort of tepid. You know what I mean? As you say, it doesn't say
Right.
that they can get married, blah, blah, you know, I mean, it's, but I would imagine he is angering some Catholics.
Yeah, not globally, but in this country a lot. The U.S. fairly uniquely in the world is against, and by U.S. I mean the U.S. Catholic leadership. So the bishops and the cardinals in the U.S. are fairly against this Pope, and there's sort of a MAGA sense to a lot of the church leadership in this country, and they're the ones that have brought up things like schisms, and he's a radical, and he's throwing away traditions of the church that have been around for thousands of years. You don't hear that as much, if at all, in other parts of the church, whether it's the West or in other areas.
You know, there's that phenomenon that's talked about, the cafeteria Catholic, you know what I mean?
Right.
You take what you want for your life. I feel, frankly, it's talked about probably because it's alliterative, cafeteria Catholic. But it's pretty true. It's true of all religions, I think, or, you know, people go, well, we do this, but we don't do that. We don't believe this, but we believe that. And some of the rituals you accept, some of the rituals you don't, et cetera. It's interesting how the Catholic Church is evolving. And now that you do this publication, I'm wondering how you see it evolving and like what the future of the church is.
Well, hard to know what the future of the church is. It's in decline in this country and throughout a bit of the West, but all organized religion is in decline throughout the West and in this country, even among evangelicals, not as greatly, but they're dipping downward. So there needs to be a sort of a rethink, I think, for what are religious leaders doing wrong. You know, what they say is we're doing nothing wrong. We're saying what we've said for 2,000 years. It's you people who keep walking out of the church who are being bad. But clearly, if you're not reaching your audience, you have to do something different. That's what the Pope is trying to do right now in Rome. It started a week ago and will go for the rest of this month. There's what's called a synod, basically a gathering of bishops from around the world. And they are looking at some of these topics. He's also added to this assembly a number of women for the first time, and just regular lay Catholics, people in the pews, as he's invited to join. And they are sitting around a number of circular tables where they're supposed to discuss issues like, should women be priests? Or should they at least have a bigger role in the church? Should priests be allowed to marry? What do we do about gay Catholics? How do we give them a better welcome? Are we supposed to be welcoming to people in general? Isn't that what the whole idea of the faith is? What do we do about divorced Catholics? Why do we kick them out? Why don't we let them? Let's find a way to bring them back in. And that's Francis saying we should have a wider tent. Part of our problem is we in the hierarchy have been closing the door in the faces of a lot of people, and maybe we should stop.
How old is he? 85, is it?
He's 86.
86.
And yeah, and there are a lot of conservative Catholics in this country just counting the days, Mark, just counting the days. Yeah.
You know, Joe, I don't want to pull rank on you because you're the real Catholic, but have you seen where they actually meet to select the next pope? Have you been inside that room? Because I have.
Well, you know, if you're talking about the Sistine Chapel, yes, I have.
Well, it's a part of the Sistine Chapel, Joe. It's not. If you've only been to the main chapel, then you haven't been to the room where they actually select it.
You must give more money to the church than I do.
I love it. I've got more bragging rights than Joe Ferrulo. Holy cow! It's a little room off the Sistine Chapel, and they're not allowed out by, as you must know this, by Catholic law.
Yep.
Until they've chosen the new priest, new pope. And I thought it was going to be this kind of lavish, kind of Trumpian, you know, a lot of gold and red velvet and stuff. No, it's super downscale, man. It looks like a bad Airbnb. And they have a bathroom there, and I'm small B on bathroom. I mean, it is it's like a wooden thing. It's not glamorous. I know. It's right, and that's where
it's probably like a monk's cell, which like the whole idea is, no, you're not staying here long. We're going to make this as uncomfortable as possible. Other than walking on hot coals, we're going to make this really
exactly. They did. It is that. All right. I only have another minute or so, but I do want to ask you what's happening across the world, but certainly in this country. We're seeing more and more Catholic churches embattled by these sex abuse cases and the extension of the statute of limitations and such, they're declaring bankruptcy. They're avoiding responsibility that is at least financial responsibility in many creative ways.
Yeah, it's a very tough situation. The Archdiocese of Baltimore, which is the oldest one in the country, the oldest Catholic archdiocese, just declared bankruptcy, which was symbolically, at least, a very big deal. Many others have already, but it being the oldest. Look, Mark, it's a tough one for the church. They, they only have so much money. They run a number of I'll take the church position on this. They run a bunch of Catholic schools in urban areas that give people an inexpensive alternative, and a lot of parishes that serve poor communities, that do a lot of social services that a lot of cities can't. So how do you keep those things going in the face of all of these lawsuits when they extend the statute of limitations? It's a tough one to declare bankruptcy. My hope is that what they'll do is what several dioceses have been doing, which is they declare bankruptcy, but then continue negotiating with parents and loved ones and victims to come to some sort of agreement. If they don't, and they may not realize, these guys are not the sharpest PR people on the planet Earth, you may have realized. If they don't come to agreements that are acceptable, that'll become another disgrace. That'll become another scandal.
Right,
So,
hopefully
they won't hide behind
it. It's been their way, which is you sort of implied.
Yeah.
It's been their way to evade responsibility, and to embrace responsibility would go a long way to broker some kind of.
You talk to cafeteria Catholics or absolute former Catholics, and what chased them out the door was those guys in leadership evading responsibility. Now, since 1999 or so, this thing became widely known among the public, and they've really done little. They've changed internal laws and guidelines so it may not happen again, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of just doing a mea culpa and telling everybody we were wrong, not really.
Joe, enjoy you and love that you have made time to join us today, the National Catholic Reporter, Joe Ferrillo, the CEO and publisher. And I guess after this meeting, maybe you'll have some other news for us. We'll watch.
Let's talk again. I mean, we'll see if there's any progress. This is going to go on for about another year with another meeting in next October. So we'll see what this one does and what gets kicked down the road. But it'll be interesting.
Love it. Joe Ferrillo, everybody. Thanks, Joe.
Take care, bro.
Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, I look to you as the young producer who's taken us this far. You probably have a plan, a strategy as to how we will make it to the end of the show cleanly. I've got Karen Dawn and her regular animal segment coming up. Also some more news from Kim. I'd like to do a news capsule. And I imagine, Albert, that you have some other videos. If you missed it, John Cryer and his wife, Lisa Joyner, left us a video earlier this hour, a happy anniversary video, and Spencer Christian as well. Albert?
Yeah, we have one more. We'll do a news capsule. We'll have one more shout out, and we'll share how you can share your shout outs, and then we'll get to Karen Dawn.
All right, Albert actually has a plan, Kim. It's amazing.
Albert, thank you.
All right, it's very, very cool. All right, smash the like button like a boss. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East, why don't we? War raging now between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas after its fighters staged a deadly surprise attacks on Israel over the weekend. Since the death toll has risen to nearly 1,200 since then, with thousands more injured on both sides of this conflict, we know at least 9 Americans are among the dead, that according to the U.S. State Department. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Israel says what his country will do to its enemies will reverberate for generations. Benjamin Netanyahu addressing his country tonight as fighting with the Palestinian militant group Hamas rages for a third day. The Prime Minister also thanked President Biden for the United States' support. There is a vote to fill the House speakership that could happen as soon as Wednesday, is what we understand. The two candidates have so far stepped up to fill the role. One of them, Ohio Republican Jim Jordan. The other, Louisiana's House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. In January, it took former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy 15 rounds of voting to gain the needed votes to secure the speakership. So we'll see what happens this time. Many banks and government offices are closed down today in observance of either Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day, whichever one you want to celebrate, right? Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citibank are all closed. Chase and TD Bank are open. The post office closed, but FedEx and UPS are running as usual. Major League playoffs roll on today with a pair of NLDS games. The Braves host the Philadelphia Phillies for Game 2 of their series. The Phillies hold a 1-0 series lead there. In Los Angeles, the Dodgers welcome the Diamondbacks, with Arizona leading that series 1-0.
Well, they don't welcome them too much. They lost big time. Didn't they get chased out of the yard, out of their own yard? Didn't they, Commissioner?
You love to see it, Mark. You love to see it. Classic Clayton Kershaw.
Clayton Kershaw had a rough outing, as Albert sort of alluding to. He has a problem in the
Death taxes
postseason.
and Kershaw choking in the playoffs. We love to see it.
Yeah.
No, I know that Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Albert.
Oh, go! I just want to say, go Giants. By the way,
go Giants. Indeed, go Giants.
Giants are not in the playoffs.
Giants are not in the playoffs.
If the Dodgers are losing, the Giants are winning. So I'm just a very bitter Giants fan.
I want to say I'm sorry to our Angelinos and our Southern California audience, Albert. And this show comes originally out of San Francisco, and so
which is why I kind of wonder if I should do the next story, because the Raiders aren't a Bay Area team anymore. Not even a California team.
Yeah, there are still a lot of connections to the Raiders, so it's okay.
But the Raiders are hoping to snap a 3-game losing streak on Monday Night Football. The team's set to host the Packers in Las Vegas in a Week 5 matchup. The Packers coming off a big loss to the Detroit Lions in Week 4. So a little.
They should play it at that big sphere thing that I've seen so much on social media.
Now that will be cool.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's crazy.
It really is like, well, there's never been anything like
this. There's never been anything like this.
I think that's really true. Anyway, go ahead.
Lastly, some of the world's top pumpkin growers are in Northern California today for the 50th annual World Championship Pumpkin Weigh-Off. Nick Kennedy is from Minnesota. He was last year's winner with a pumpkin that weighed in at 2,560 pounds.
There's never been anything like this.
A lot goes into growing one of these giant pumpkins. The world record of 2,702 pounds was set in Italy. This year's winner will receive $9 in prize money per pound of pumpkin. That's a big payout.
That is a big payout.
If the world record is eclipsed, then a $30,000 bonus will be awarded.
What?
You can get the biggest one. Yeah.
Wow.
So big doings in Half Moon Bay today.
They've stepped up that festival. Back in the old days when I used to be there, I was a judge, I think, or something a few times.
Were you?
Yeah. I don't even remember whether a judge or I had some official role. Yeah. Anyway, I don't remember the prizes being so substantial. So good for them.
There's no joking around. I mean, when you're talking pumpkins in Half Moon Bay and you're talking giant pumpkins, it's on.
What can you tell us about the scene?
It's on, Larry. It's on with giant pumpkins, Larry.
And these are big, big pumpkins. Since you were the judge, I mean, you saw the size of these things, right?
They're huge.
This thing is ready to pop, people.
Yeah,
these are
they're huge.
Massive. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's fun to go look at them, too. Half Moon Bay Pumpkin Festival.
Mm-hmm.
This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. We love them. We love their coffee. We love their tea. And you get a 10% off discount. So check out the website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Peruse around, see if anything floats your boat. And if you check out, use Mark T all together and get your 10% discount.
Yeah, get whatever you want on the site and use Mark T at checkout for 10% off, as Kim says. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Yeah. Coach, like CoACHELLA. valleycoffee.com and Mark T at checkout. Yeah.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is The Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I love that. What is that, like a 70s funk thing? Feels like a Superfly kind of thing is what that is. Welcome back, everybody. I want to get right to it without any further delay. If it's okay with you, Kim. On Mondays, we like to check in on issues with animals and the animal kingdom. And she does a regular newsletter tracking animal issues, but also tracking news and how the media talks about so many of these issues. She's Karen Dawn. Hi, Karen. Thank you for your patience. Dawn Watch is the name of the newsletter you do.
Karen, you're muted.
You're muted right now, but I know you're sitting on some great things. So unmute and start.
Unmuted.
Yeah, start sharing. What's going on, Karen Dawn?
Such a pleasure to be with you today. The show is so rich, and your guests have moved me so. And I had to share that. And Kim got in touch, of course, and said that with everything happening in Israel, we can expect we might do a shorter segment today. And it's so interesting. Of course, I moved to the middle there. Of course, I understood that for humans, human issues generally take priority. But I sent a quote, and it's so relevant to something you sent me about that new law in California as well. The founder of the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, George Engel, was asked, how can you focus on animal cruelty when there's so much human suffering in the world? And his answer was, I'm working at the root. And I think that is so relevant to everything going on at the moment, in that when we close off our hearts to the suffering of others, it comes back at us. And that's what's happening in Gaza and Israel, Palestine. And the law just signed by the governor in California this morning points to that. And you sent that over to me, that's Judy Mancuso's group. And she's the most wonderful activist with social compassion in legislation. And they got a law signed today, or it's announced today that it's just been signed, that from now on, when people are convicted of heinous acts of animal cruelty, they will have to undergo psychological evaluations. And that is such an important law for various reasons. And I think a lot of people know, but not everybody knows, that something like 95% of serial killers start with animals. The link between immense cruelty to other species and cruelty to humans is so close. So by getting this law enforced, we protect animals from further abuse, but also if we can treat the problems that these humans have, we might be protecting our daughters from the guys doing it, etc. What's interesting about animal cruelty laws that a lot of people won't know is that all animals used for food are exempt from those laws. And that's this bizarre relationship our species and our society has with animals at the moment, is that dogs and cats are protected and any animals being kept as pets are protected. But the most horrendous things can happen to animals on factory farms. And there is no protection for that. And certainly if you are doing terrible things to animals on factory farms, you are not arrested and you don't undergo psychological evaluation. And if you are ordering products that are made by those systems, you're not undergoing any psychological evaluation either. So that's our strange relationship.
Well, the two are different, I think, but I understand your point. I mean, the reason that I don't purchase or consume any animal products at all is because of the way animals are treated. That's a full stop for me. I don't care after that. Like the environment, good for the environment, good for your health, whatever. That's not the reason I'm part of it. But having said that, we package these things that come from those places and that cruelty, we package it so effectively that, to be fair, those people, my viewers and listeners, others just who are consumers, who sit down to whatever, it might be to eat something or to use some product that was the result of animal cruelty, it's too packaged for them to realize the breadcrumbs back. Whereas the cruelty that you're describing, where you're saying that there's no law that protects those animals that are in the environment of being used for food. They're basically viewed as products. That's real cruelty, and there is a certain. I'm not saying that everybody there is a sadist at all, but I am saying that there has to be a disconnect because the kind of cruelty you're talking about is pretty grotesque. So,
it's you say that not everybody there is a sadist, and oh my gosh, that is so true. But there's a beautiful line: "Hurt people hurt people," and I would take that also to say hurt people hurt animals, and that'll take us very nicely into a story which, with almost prescience, came out in the Washington Post on Friday, which is about the use of donkeys in Gaza. And it was right before the Hamas attacks that this story came out, and it was talking about the fact that Israel is precluding donkeys from entering Gaza. I've got my phone going off there. Israel is precluding donkeys from entering Gaza because they are so horrendously mistreated there. And when I read that, I immediately saw the irony that so many people will see that they don't care about the people there, they only care about the donkeys, which is absolutely not true for most. Israelis are extremely concerned about the conditions of the people in Gaza. And it isn't actually the fault of most Israelis what's going on there. But the reports coming out were of little boys who would be driving these donkey carts and whipping the donkeys. And of course, when you hear that, there's a couple of horrible things going on there. There's little boys working who are driving donkey carts to pick up human waste and cart it to places. And that's horrendous. And then there are also donkeys getting whipped by miserable little boys who are taking out that hurt on the animals. And the fact that there are folks like me who work in animal advocacy who are working to protect the animals doesn't mean we don't care about the people at all. But it is this issue that it's all part of the same situation, that when we've got abuse, it goes between species. And generally, a lot of the same people acting to protect animals are the same people acting to protect children as well. I mean, compassion need not be, and usually is not, species specific. And that's
I think you draw a very strong connection. I think you speak quite empathically about the fact that there is a cruelty there to animals, and there's a connection to the cruelty that the people must endure who occupy that same space.
Right. And it is easier to worry about animals when you're not going through what those people living in there are going through. But the answer isn't to therefore ignore the suffering of animals and say, oh, well, the people need the animals, so let them. And, the photo that's up there at the moment that I know some people can see, you've got your donkey there who's carting around a whole
vegetable cart or
Thank you. And I'm just looking at him and thinking it's something that most people don't think of, but whether or not he's actually being beaten, which there's lots of reports saying he probably is, that is not a life. And that is something that I so value, the opportunity to come on this show and hear human suffering being spoken about so empathetically with so much wisdom, and to also remind people that what we are doing to other species isn't right either. And I'm going to really step out on a limb here, and some people might be angry at me for saying this, but some people might appreciate it. And I gave animals my word I would speak for them, so I'm going to say it. But what happened to those folks at the rave in the area right near Gaza, young people shot down in the prime of their life as they were out dancing, was so horrendous to read about. And the conditions in Gaza, which is, it's been mentioned a few times, is like the most packed place on the planet for humans. It's so bad to read about. But if animals like that donkey we just saw were prancing around in a field in the prime of their life and were suddenly shot down, that would be a miracle out of heaven for the kindness we were showing those animals compared to what we show the members of their species now. And the way that the people in Gaza are living, which is not acceptable under Hamas rule, compared to what we are doing to other species, it's not even in the same stratosphere. And that's why there are people like me who, despite having immense compassion for what is going on with human beings at the moment, have to come and remind people, what we're doing to other species is horrendous. And it is related. When we learn to close off our hearts to the suffering of others, then we will close them off to other races and other nations as well.
Very well put, and I think you connect everything. This is a guy who likes to stir the pot, and I don't mind the pot being stirred. This is Chris. If we don't use animals, the domesticated ones won't exist. Isn't that a form of extinction in favor of compassion? No. That's like me saying, I enslave a bunch of people, but isn't it better that I enslave them than that they go away, that they become extinct? Those people will be extinct unless I breed them and use them in my slavery. It's absurd. It's an absolute absurdity, Chris. And so, and Karen has just told you, those animals would be better off not being there than being used with a nothing life.
I so agree with that second point, but I love you, Mark. But as long as I didn't say his question was absurd, you have every right to say that. I thought it was a great question. So I
meant the proposition is absurd. I mean, that's what I meant.
I think Chris, in asking that, I'm guessing he doesn't. If it's a he, I don't know. Yeah, I think you said he. I'm guessing Chris doesn't know all that much about the way that we treat animals on factory farms and in slaughterhouses. Factory farming, for example, I always knew all my life that we ate animals and we didn't treat them the greatest. And now I'm pointing to this donkey on the street and I'm saying the donkey would rather have a real life. And I'm going that step further. But for those focused on factory farms, these animals are kept in crates for their entire lives. So the point Mark made, of course, is they would be so much better never having been born. So
yeah, that's just a fact. I don't want to. I mean, I don't want every week to, but it's just because this stuff does come in. I do want to knock it down. I'm sorry. It's just you're much better off to not be around than to endure a life of suffering that is filled with violence and then ultimately.
But what Chris writes is what so many people are thinking. So I so appreciate the question.
Well, Chris says he's posing it for the philosophical implications. Thank you, Chris. You're nothing if not a philosopher. Karen, thank you for so the donkey piece that was in the New York Times, that's posted on your Washington Post, donwatch.com.
Oh my God, I'm a little bit mortified to say that at the moment. It will be within the next couple of days because I've got to update my website. People can, donwatch.com, you can go find stories that have appeared recently, but we have not been doing a good job of updating the website.
You can find
where
the
you'll always find things is on the Don Watch Facebook page. I will always share these stories. Okay. And you can look Washington Post donkeys and you can find out what's been going on with the donkeys.
Love it. Thank you for joining us on Monday. Sorry our time is short. Thank you, Karen. Sure. Karen Dawn, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Karen.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Yeah, I'm right here, kids. I'm right here. I thought I actually would acknowledge a couple of people, Kim, who, I don't know if they want their names out or not. That's what's kind of weird. There are a lot of people on PayPal. Mm-hmm. Now, PayPal, I'll make it clear. All of you PayPal contributors who contribute every month, you are posted at the end of our show every day because you've made this show possible over the last year. We have sponsors who help us around the edges. Kim's newscast is sponsored, and I'm so grateful to Tenuta and to Coachella Valley Coffee. But the essence of what supports us, indisputably, you, the listeners and viewers. So I really am excited about the kind of ongoing support we have, and that's why we post it every single day at the end of the show. And those people who are in bigger font, they typically are contributing more. We just want some way to acknowledge that, the heft of their support. But everybody makes a difference, regardless of what you donate. So all of our patrons, thank you so much. Or as I like to say,
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Albert, in our last few minutes, stick the landing. Bring us to glory, Albert.
Albert, thank you.
Come on, Albert. What have you got planned? Something really great.
Let's get to
Well,
the
there
shout-out
it is. Right there on YouTube, live Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Pacific, the one and only Mark Thompson Show. Great stuff. Man, I can't believe it's been a year since Mark took that show from radio to YouTube. What a huge success it's been. Obviously, it's great to listen to him live, but you can also go on and listen to past streams as well anytime. Mark, congratulations, my friend. You are a world-class broadcaster, such a smart and great radio host, and I just love listening to what you do, love being on the show occasionally. You've always been kind to let me fill in for you, although I have big shoes to fill when I do that, but it's always a privilege. I am so thrilled for you. Keep it going. Congratulations, 1 year of the Mark Thompson Show on YouTube. Pretty cool. Hey, a big shout out, my friend. See you soon. Big shout out.
I love it, Dan Ashley.
Nice.
Come on. Love my Dan Ashley.
Yep.
Albert, thank you.
Albert, thank you.
Yes, and Kim.
Kim, how are you?
All right.
That was
all
great.
of our Dan drops are so.
Yeah.
Oh, he's great. Love our Dan. We've got to get him back on to talk music, Albert, before the holidays. He's got that one holiday song, remember?
Yeah, of course. And,
So we'll do that.
Hopefully we have the okay to play that on YouTube without them
Oh my
take it
God,
from
that
us.
was right. They demonetized us or whatever last time. Now, Albert, what else is there? Anything else that I need to know?
I
As
think we
I
got a
wrap
couple
up.
donations during the show.
Cool.
I didn't want to interrupt you. We're having a couple of serious topics today.
Yeah. Tenuta Vineyards rock, says Debbie.
Yeah, they do.
With the $5 donation.
shout
Rich
out.
is amazing and so fun. Rich is.
Yeah.
They are both terrific out there. And Rich really brings he's a front of the house guy.
Yeah.
He greets you and makes sure
really
you feel
friendly, really
Yeah.
kind. Yeah.
So appreciate that. Pinky $1 a day.
Big
but
shout out.
Looks like more than $1. $3 for
Wow.
today. Thank you.
Okay.
Every little bit.
That's nice,
I appreciate it, Pink. Very, very cool. I will mention again, we have 2 spots open for Thursday's meetup. It's a virtual meetup. It'll happen at 7:45 Pacific time. Sorry, East Coasters, that it will be a little bit on the late side. But West Coasters, hopefully that works for you. It's our 1-year anniversary virtual meetup. 2 glorious hours. We're limiting it to 20 people so that we can actually knock around with you for 2 hours. Myself, Kim, Albert, Tony, others. We have special guests who are coming through. It'll be Thursday, as I say, 7:45 to 9:45, if you want to be part of it. It's, again, 2 spots open, $50 to reserve a private link. I'll tell you how to get that done if you just RSVP to mtsmeetup@gmail.com. mtsmeetup@gmail.com. A couple of people are return visitors from the last meetup. So that's kind of cool.
This will be our 3rd meetup, and I have to say, I really, truly enjoy them. Because you see, we're all in the chat together. We're all here, contacting each other. But until you really see the people's faces and get to know who's who, it's just it opens up this whole new world of, who's behind the names on the side of the chat. And it's been really cool to meet people and get to know them that way.
I will say one other thing, Kim, in that spirit. You don't have to be on camera. Like if you want to join us and just have your voice, just don't turn your camera on. It's fine with us. We're not forcing you to turn your camera on. A lot of people go, I can't get the right shot, or I don't like the way I look, or my hair's not right today, or I just when I've looked better on other days, this isn't my bet. Whatever. Don't put your camera on that. It's fine. You can join us the other way. In fact, Trevor from Hollywood, to maintain his profile, Kim, he has asked, he said, Mark, is it okay if I join, but I don't have my camera? I said, of course.
Yeah. You can always use a picture too.
No, that's true
right?
too.
So if you have a picture of yourself you can put that up instead of the camera. But...
Yes.
Kim, how are you?
Exactly right. So anyway, that's Thursday, and we will report back. It's not for air, but we will report back to you on the doings. Is there anything else that
Did we get to Enid's donation? I'm not sure. Enid Fox.
I think we did, but let's get to it again. It was a huge donation, $50 from Enid. I'll let Kim read it this time.
When you put together the Mark Thompson show, you gave my husband and I a life raft after being loyal KGO listeners for 35 years. Congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. We look forward to many, many more years with you. Love, or they didn't say love. I'll add love, Dwight and Enid. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, really nice and kind.
Yeah.
And of course, Wes today too with a super sticker.
West with the super sticker for $5. Thank you, West.
Big shout out.
Yeah.
And then Jim Slayton with a $5 super sticker. Your generosity moves me, everyone.
Big shout out.
Very, very grateful. I got a long email that I'll read tomorrow. What else is I'm doing? I also have other video greetings that I will share with you tomorrow. And they're not all from celebrities. There's some like regular folk, our listeners. And let me just say, Kim, every listener is a celebrity to me. Yes. Did that sound sincere when I said that?
Yes, it did.
All right, thank you. All right. Because obviously that's not true.
Maybe not to Mark. Me.
Oh, come on. I called myself out. Come on. Thank you.
God. You know who I am?
We have had a really, really good day, but it is a really, really tough time in the world. So I am I'm grateful for all of our support. It's our big anniversary week. We promise we'll pepper it with some fun stuff. Tomorrow, David K. Johnston joins us. The Pulitzer Prize winner will speak about everything going on in the Middle East. Also, some new revelations and the possible connection between Donald Trump and the Middle East. It's a fascinating time. So we'll get to all of that tomorrow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
After Party Live is next.
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Oh, my God. That's it. All right. Until tomorrow.
Wow.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.